Reading a book. An artist sees a woman once on a crowded platform for less than a minute and cannot forget her. He paints her from memory and hangs the portrait in a small gallery. Viewers begin leaving clues: a scarf, a ring mark, a particular way of holding a bag. The painting becomes a quiet bulletin board. The artist becomes an unwilling detective, and the stranger he imagined must decide whether to stay anonymous or step out of the canvas and be seen.
Reading a book. He saw her where people are names for a second, and then noise again. Lucas had been waiting for the late train and pretending to read a brochure about affordable frames. The platform wind came from nowhere and made a show of everyone's coats. She stepped into the gust and steadied an old man who had not been asking for help, but needed it. Not a dramatic rescue, just a palm at his elbow, the kind that tells the body, "You have balance, I'll hold it with you." She smiled once, small, private, not for display, and then a train sighed in like an answer. She boarded. The doors closed. He saw very little: a wool scarf the color of storm water, her hair tucked into it except for one rebellious strand, the faint burn on her wrist that looked like a crescent moon, a canvas bag packed as if it knew its job. She held it in her left hand, but the strap wore a notch in the right shoulder, habit doing geometry. Then she was gone, and the platform filled the space with ordinary again. Lucas stared at the metal door like a person who had missed a line he was supposed to speak. He thought, as if the thought had a schedule, I could paint her.
The studio had a sink that didn't fully trust water, a window that preferred other rooms, and a view of keys. The locksmith beneath him hung silver copies in gleaming rows, an accidental chandelier. Lucas put the brochure down, turned a canvas toward the table lamp, and began to reverse the train. He mixed the gray of the platform air out of blue and memory. He painted the scarf first, cheap wool that pills, dyed with the slightest green, threaded with a lighter line that wasn't there but should have been. He painted the left hand, small fingers with careful nails. The crescent burn, the image of heat forgiven. He refused to invent the eyes. He didn't know them. He'd seen her profile, the intention of her jaw, the way she looked at the old man as if he were a cousin. She remembered suddenly. He could lie the eyes into being, but this felt like a promise, not a lie. He painted the angle of her head, the crosswind in hair, the bag that held weight without shape. He stayed up until the hallway smelled like bread from the bakery 2 buildings over, and the locksmith started banging open the metal gate. He slept on the paint-spattered couch and dreamed of trains practicing.
Reading a book. You must title things you want to take seriously. Lucas wrote, "Seen once," then crossed it out, then wrote, "Station wind," then "After the door," then returned to "Seen once." That was the point. He found himself returning to the canvas every hour, making the burn a fraction more crescent, adding the faintest thread of a seam to the scarf, scumbling the background until it wasn't a place so much as a temperature. He kept the eyes for last, a deferral that felt respectful and also like fear. He took photos on his phone, sent one to no one, deleted it, took another, scolded himself, and went downstairs for almonds and an apple. The locksmith, who liked being right about small things, said, "You look like someone who started a sentence in the wrong room." "I'm painting a stranger," Lucas said. The locksmith nodded. "We do that all the time. We call them customers."
Reading a book. Nora ran the kind of gallery that loved paintings more than success. The floor had a historic slant that made patrons feel like they were walking into Revelations. She gave Lucas a corner for 3 weeks and the use of a hammer that had met every nail as an equal. The portrait went up with 2 other pieces, an interior of a laundromat and a window with a bird on the wrong side. Nora read the title card out loud like an incantation. "Seen once," she said. "People will either love that or think it's a complaint." The first night, 10 visitors came with wine that had survived the bicycle basket. They said things like, "The brushwork is humble," which Lucas decided to take as kindness. A woman stood close to Scene once and squinted. "The scarf," she said. "What about it?" asked Nora, ready to defend, in case. "The scarf is a working-class scarf. You can see how the wool wants to give up. But look here, someone repaired the edge. Hand stitch, blanket stitch. See how the thread wobbles a little? The person who mended it cares more about function than straight lines." "It's a painting of a painting," said her friend, and they all laughed at the way art likes to fold. A man with a delivery company logo on his sleeve stopped, frowned kindly, and left a note on the comment card that read, "She holds the bag like a messenger, but the strap indentation says she's been carrying on the opposite side a long time. Messenger for herself." Nora taped the note to the wall, as she did with all the notes that refused to be simple. "You're running a soft investigation," she told Lucas, delighted. "I like when a painting is also a bulletin board."
Reading a book. The comment cards multiplied by accident. Someone started pinning them below the frame with the gallery pushpins. Someone else wrote on the back of a receipt, and then on a napkin from the bakery, which left a butter stain that made everything smell friendly. Lucas pretended not to read them, and then read them as if they were recipes. Left-handed, look at the positioning of the bag and the grip. Right shoulder indented because she's been countering subway sway for years. Burn on rest equals kitchen or pottery. Crescent suggests stove top edge or kiln shelf. Scarf pattern looks like my mother's habit. She mended with contrasting thread, so we'd always see the work. She is listening. See the mouth? The tiniest curve downward. Not sadness, concentration. She's counting something. Steps? Announcements? Lucas took notes in a small book that had previously been for grocery lists. He added his own. She was carrying weight without favoring knees. Strong, but not performing strength. No watch, no jewelry. A plain ring mark, absent ring. Habit of wearing. He could not tell, looking longer, whether he was learning truths or writing himself a stranger he wanted to meet. The eyes remained blank under a soft glaze. Viewers said it made the portrait hum. Nora said it made it sellable. Lucas smiled and let the blankness be.
2 days into the show, a man came late and stood very still in front of the painting. He looked less at the woman and more at the scarf, the burn, the slight angle of the head. "Are you the painter?" he asked. Lucas said yes and prepared to be told that what he had painted had already been painted better. "She looks like my sister," the man said, "if my sister would ever hold still." "Does your sister have a crescent burn on her wrist?" Nora asked, too loud as gallerists sometimes are when a story enters the building. "She does," he said, surprised into belief. "From a restaurant line. She worked there. And the scarf, our mother mended everything. We grew up loud and broke." "What's her name?" Lucas asked gently. "Elena," he said. "But she changed it later. She went by Lane. We lost touch." "Lost how?" Nora asked, quieter now. "We fought like people who agreed on too much," he said. "She left the house with the bag like that, like she had a job to do that didn't require permission." He swallowed. "I haven't seen her in a year. I moved, she moved more." He looked again at the painting. "This could be her. The way the jaw says she will not be edited." Lucas felt a stitch in his chest he did not have language for. "If it is her, what would you do?" "Thank whoever saw her," the man said, "and ask what train it was." "Which platform?" Lucas said, almost laughing at himself. "Which hour?" the man added, and they were conspirators then. He left the number on the back of a receipt. He wrote it slowly, as if he could misspell his own phone. Reading a book.
Lucas visited the post office because it was raining, and because the gallery air was starting to smell like the combination of varnish and advice. Alma, behind the register, had a way of looking at stamps like they were small, persuasive arguments. "Look," she said, before he could request anything. The commemoratives came, birds that stole jewelry. He bought birds and told her why he was smiling at nothing. About the painting, the scarf, the comment board, the man who thought he recognized a sister. Alma leaned on the counter the way librarians lean on secrets. If it's a working scarf, if it's green gone gray, it was cheap wool, mass-dyed. But the thread that mended it? That looks like old sewing box stuff. People who mend with care have a habit of buying good thread once and using it forever. Look at the slight color shift. Not new cotton, silk, from a box that belonged to someone's mother. Lucas stared at her. "How do you know that?" she said. "Paper has memory. So does thread. Besides, I grew up in a house where mending was a hobby and a sermon." She tore a slip from a notepad and drew a tiny pattern of blanket stitch. "If you see this in real life, the person who mended is the kind who believes in small repairs history will never praise." He took the drawing, suddenly protective about a stranger's scarf that might belong to a missing sister and to a habit of care. A guitarist played outside the gallery on Saturdays to convert sentiment into rent. He knew 3 songs and made the 4th out of the first 3. Lucas asked if he'd been at the station the day the door closed on the woman. "I play there sometimes. The acoustics are generous. Why?" Lucas showed you a print of the painting on his phone. The guitarist tilted his head. "She did stop to steady a man," he said. "I remember because no one else did, and because that's the kind of thing we pretend we didn't notice so we won't feel graded." "Did you see which train?" "Blue Line," he said, "because I had to change my tuning. Don't ask. People in that hall always look like they're seeing old versions of themselves. She didn't. She looked present. That's rare." "Thank you," Lucas said, and meant it for more than geographical data. Reading a book. Lucas printed a postcard of the painting, cheap, matte, with "Seen Once" on the back and the gallery address. He pinned one to the community board by the station where people sell futons and beginnings. He wrote, "Do you know her?" and left a small tear-off strip with Nora's email, because his own inbox had enough unreturned mail. By the afternoon, only 1 strip remained. He replaced them, feeling like a stapler detective. That evening, Nora texted in her normal, punctuationless bliss, "You did a thing. Who knew paper could be internet?" 3 emails came. One was from a volunteer coordinator at a small hospital who wrote, "We have a reader who visits once a week and reads novels aloud to people who ask her to invent the voices. She looks like your portrait. She calls herself Lane." Another was from a ceramic studio. A woman with a crescent burn on her wrist threw a perfect cylinder without bragging about it. Left-handed. Wore a scarf even though the kiln made the room a season hotter. The third was short and not immediately helpful, but sweet. She buys oranges at the late market and gives one to whoever is standing near the 2 ripe bananas. Lucas sat on the paint-spattered couch and invented a person from 3 emails and 1,000 brushstrokes. The volunteer office smelled like hand sanitizer and optimism. A woman with a name tag that said Ruth and an expression that said she had learned patience the old-fashioned way asked Lucas to wait. "I can't give you personal details," she said when she returned, administering the necessary law. "But I can call Lane and tell her someone is looking for her, kindly, not urgently. Will that help?" "It will," Lucas said. Tell her I'm the painter who saw her steady a man at the station. Tell her the painting is getting a little too famous for a corner gallery, and if she wants it taken down, I will take it down." Ruth's face did that thing faces do when they are relieved by someone else's good judgment. "You're the rare kind who asks for less," she said. "I'll call."
2 hours later, he received a voicemail. A voice that felt familiar without being known said, "This is Lane. Ruth told me about the painting. I don't know whether to be pleased or cautious. Probably both. I'll come by the gallery tomorrow when it's quiet." He replayed the message until he wanted to memorize the cadence, then told himself sternly to go wash brushes like a person with a life.
She came in a plain coat and a deliberate lack of ceremony. Nora vanished into the back room within 30 seconds with the pretense of inventory because some scenes do not need an audience. Lane stood in front of scene once and did not touch the frame. She stood close, then stepped back, then tilted her head the way people check against mirrors. "You left the eyes for last," she said quietly. "Yes," Lucas answered. "You were right," she said, "to leave them blank. The day you saw me, I was undecided. I had 2 versions of myself packed in that bag." He waited. "I was coming from the hospital," she said, "and going to the studio. I had just decided to say no to a thing I wanted because the version of me who said yes would stop being able to show up for strangers. That sounds dramatic. It wasn't. It was a choice about time and its temperature." Lucas looked at the crescent burn, now the only unarguable fact. "The burn?" she said, almost laughing. "Teapot. Bad cattle, good tea. You held an old man steady." "I have good elbows for that," she said, another near laugh. "I thought no one saw." "I saw, and did not apologize for seeing." She studied the scarf, the invented seam, the mended edge that Alma had drawn. "You noticed the mending," she said. "Someone noticed it in the gallery," he replied. "I painted it later. Revision isn't a crime." "It was my mother's. She mended everything. I keep it because it smells like newsprint and coriander, if you can believe a scarf stores spice." "I can," Lucas said. Lane looked at the comment cards pinned beneath the painting. She read the one about left-handed grip and messenger habits. She read the one about the bag indent and the kitchen burns. She read, "She is listening," and nodded. "You have a city doing light detective work," she said. "We're not trying to find you," he said quickly. "We're trying to deserve you." She looked at him then, properly. "You're good with sentences. You know that, right?" "I'm better with paint," although on some days he wasn't sure. She stood for a while, letting the quiet do the work. "Will you sell it?" she asked finally. "To you?" he smiled. "Yes." She shook her head. "To me, yes, but that's not what I'm asking. Will you sell it away from me?" "No," he said, then corrected himself. "Not unless you want me to. It was painted with a favor in it. I don't sell favors unless the person they belong to consents." She considered, then said, "Keep it on the wall for a week. People are writing their own stories under it. That means they need it. After that, I'd like to buy it, to put it somewhere it won't be seen accidentally. I like being ordinary in public." "Understood," he said. She took a card from her pocket and wrote Lane with a phone number, tidy, left slanted. "In case you want to paint from life," she said without looking up, and the room did an internal key change.
Reading a book. When Lucas told the man from the opening night, Elena's brother, what had happened, the brother came by when he knew Lane wouldn't be there. He stood again in front of the painting. "I don't need to meet her," he said, surprising them both. "She left that choice when she left me a note that said, 'I love you and I need the version of me that isn't your sister as often as the version that is.' That's a good note. It's a shark note. I keep it in a cookbook because it helps me salt correctly." "I can pass a message," Lucas offered. "Pass this. Tell her I stopped being angry while buying oranges. Tell her I'm marrying someone who also mends at the edge and that I understand now why people leave, so they won't lie." Lucas did not write it down. He would remember it and deliver it without editing.
Reading a book.
Lane came to the studio above the locksmith on a morning that smelled like coffee that had given up and rain that had not. She sat on the stool with her scarf off. The burn was less visible now, a memory of heat. "I misremembered the seam," he confessed. "I mended it again," she said. "Mending is a hobby with delusions of grandeur." He mixed color without thinking, her skin not pale but full of the same light as pages, the kind that is ready for words. He painted slowly, asking permission implicitly with each pass. She sat with that stillness some people never learn, the kind that says, "I can be here because I am here." He did not need to invent anything. The room did that for him. They talked like people who are auditioning to be trusted with minor holidays. She told him about the reading at the hospital, about the woman who preferred recipes read like poems, about the man who wanted the same page of the same mystery novel every week because the detective never solved it and that felt fair. She told him about the studio where the white buckets like moons ring the room and the clay that refused to become bowls. She told him about making a list of things she would not apologize for and sticking it on the fridge with tape that smelled like orange peel. He told her about the locksmith's ways, about painting laundromats because he liked the democracy of spinning, about a childhood in the house that spoke in quiet because loud always missed the point. He told him about once spending a month painting the same window and only later realizing he had been measuring time, not light. At one point, she said, "You never asked why I left the platform so quickly." "I already knew," he said. The door closed. They laughed like people who recognized the joke in the truth. Halfway through the second session, Nora texted Lucas 17 times in a row. "Reporter saw the board wants to do a small piece about the comment cards." Lane read the preview with cautious amusement. "Let the piece be about noticing," she said, "not about me. The world needs help with verbs, not nouns." The piece ran, "The portrait that became a quiet search." It showed the scarf edge, the pencil notes, a close-up of the painted burn next to a paragraph about how we make narratives from scraps because the scraps are sometimes enough. People brought in their own small cases. A photograph of a mended sweater, a ring with a ghost indent on a finger, a story about a stranger who fixed a chain on a bike and looked like he was praying. Someone left a note. "If you're Lane, tell the volunteer office the chessboard is missing a knight." Later, Ruth would report delighted that a young visitor had arrived with the knight in a plastic bag and a story too long to fit on any card. Nora filled the binder. Alma donated a 10 of paper clips for restraint. The guitarist wrote a song with 3 chords and a 4th that arrived late, called Seen Twice. The city, or a small square of it, practiced the hobby of being kind on purpose.
Reading a book. Lucas had stopped at the eyelids in the first painting. In the second, from life, he asked, "May I?" "You're the one who saw me when I was undecided," she said. "You've earned eyes." He painted them last, brown with a patient amber, then darker, then a light like 2 well-placed words. He did not paint the exact line of her gaze toward him. He painted it slightly off, as she had been the first day, turned to someone else, the old man, the station, the version of herself she was choosing. When he set the brush down, she stood and looked at both canvases, the one of memory, the one of presence. "They agree," she said. "They argue," he said. "They agree about the argument," she replied, and he thought that might be the best definition of intimacy he had ever heard. Reading a book. Lucas met the brother at the corner bakery and repeated the exact words he had promised to carry. The brother cried in the straightforward way of men who have decided crying is a tool, not a performance. He bought oranges for everyone in line. He wrote another number on a napkin and asked Lucas to keep it, in case not knowing ever becomes heavier than knowing. Later, Lane asked, "Was he angry?" "He was a person who has learned to salt," Lucas said, and she understood the code. "Tell him I still wear the scarf," she said. "Tell him I mend the edge every time it frays, and that I expect it to fray."
Lane bought the first canvas quietly.
with cash that looked like savings and a look like relief. "Hang it where you can walk past without preparing," Lucas said. "No ceremony. Paintings like to earn their keep." She hung it in a small room with a window that faced a tree that took weather personally. She kept the comment card binder on a shelf with cookbooks. Sometimes, on days when the world asked for more than it gave, she would read the card that said, "She is listening," and let it be the day's assignment. The second portrait, the one from life, stayed with Lucas for a while in the studio above the locksmith. People came by and did not have language for why it made them stand straighter. The locksmith said, "That one looks like it has a plan." Lucas said he suspected it did.
They walked through the station together once, not because the story needed symmetry, but because the body has its own rituals. Lane found the column where she had waited for the blue line, pointed to the place where wind turns corners wrong, and apologized to no one for liking noise. They stood where the old man had wobbled. Another old man wobbled and did not need them. It was a relief to be unnecessary. "Did you ever think you were painting someone else?" she asked. "I was painting a problem," he said. "How to make the feeling of that minute obedient to color." "And did you?" she asked. "No," he said, and then, after a breath, "Not obedient, fateful." She nodded. "I like fateful." They took the long stairs up. At the top, the air tasted like carts and a florist who believed in weekends. A busker played something almost like the song you think you heard as a child.
Reading a book. For all the notes and emails and messages and meetings, there are things the painting never answered. Who did she read to at the hospital the week the door closed? What cylinder did she throw at the studio, and what did it become? Why did she decide no that morning? What train would she have taken if she'd said yes? Some days Lucas wanted to ask. Most days he liked that not every thread had to be tied. The detective work had been light because the life was heavy enough. Sometimes people still recognized the scarf and wrote to the gallery, not to ask anything, but to report small familiarities. My mother mended edges with contrast thread, too. I hold my bag like that because my father always stood to my right. I have a crescent on my wrist from a kettle that whistled louder than its work. Nora stopped counting the notes. She just kept adding pushpins until the wall looked like a map of a city that had decided to locate itself in sentences.
Reading a book. There is a day in late afternoon light when Lucas is alone in the studio and the locksmith is, for once, silent. He takes a fresh canvas, not the third in a series, but also not that, and begins another portrait, not of Lane, of a woman on a bus holding a sleeping child whose hat has lost its pom-pom, of a man in a laundromat who closes the round window gently and tells the spinning clothes they'll be fine, or a girl running up the station stairs with a harmonica and a paper bag like she has stolen music. He paints strangers he saw once, because seeing once is sometimes enough. Lane texts, "Ruth says the chess knight returned and immediately disappeared into someone's pocket again. We have decided it likes field trips." He writes back, "I'll paint it a passport." She sends a half photo of the scarf edge with a new line of blanket stitch, tidy, patient. He thinks about Alma at the post office and the way Thread remembers. That night, as the city knows how to be loud and quiet in the wrong places, Lucas walks past the gallery. The binder is still there. The portrait space has a new small sign Nora made from a paint stick and love. Seen once, and again. He stands for a minute. Someone else steps up beside him, reading. They nod at each other like people at a memorial, and then like people who are just happy a door exists. Back upstairs, the lamp warms the second portrait. Lane from life, eyes finished, gaze just off, the burn turned pale. He cleans his brushes, rinsing until the water runs clear, which is how he knows to stop for the night. He makes tea. The kettle gives up the ghost at exactly the volume of memory. He thinks about platforms and doors, and the fraction of a second between seeing and being seen. He lifts his cup toward the painting, as if you can toast a person who is not in the room, and says, because it is true, thank you. There is low, city air, a train far away, and a page turning.